So, Paul, we watched the Oscars last night, and
people 3.5 hours of it.
Yes, and people say football games are too long.
Yeah, it felt long, didn't
it felt a little long,
Yeah.
especially by the end, finishing up some of the awards. They saved the Best Picture nominations, Best Actor till the end-ish. So
just to keep people hanging on until the very end.
Exactly. So what are some of your thoughts? So your takeaways from the Oscars this year?
I was very interested. This was one of the more wide open Oscar races that we've seen in the last several years, right? Anora was the big winner, walked away with 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, which was a surprise to a lot of people. They were expecting Demi Moore to walk away with it.
Okay.
And I thought that it was in that way. I'm sure that the people involved with Anora were just thrilled with it. I know it has a lot of fans, but from a plugged-in perspective, that was one of the most unfriendly plugged-in movies that could have been.
A little tough. You know, it was funny because in the intro, Conan O'Brien, he made specific mention that there were 479 F words in Anora.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh, dang, Conan's coming for Plugged-In's job. He's counting them now too. So, yeah, not a super, and not just the language for that reason. Not a super plugged-in friendly movie.
And you know when people are, going out of their way to thank sex workers during their acceptance speeches, that's not necessarily, that is not a sign of a big plugged-in approved movie.
Right, and that was one of the things I noticed as well. For Anora, 2 separate times. So it was the director, Sean Baker, and the actress, Mikey Madison.
Right.
Both went out of their way, as you said, to thank the sex worker community specifically. And I just found that a very interesting kind of shout out that they gave. Just the kind of the tenor of it too is just like, just thank you so much for allowing us to step into your world. And it was just an interesting, I think, perspective.
It was an interesting perspective. And one of the things that I noticed as the ceremony went on, when you look at the major awards, when you're looking at Best Picture, Best Director, all the acting awards, cinematography, the original screenplay, these were all won by R-rated movies. The entire ceremony was really dominated by 3-4 movies. You had Anora, you had The Brutalist.
Yep, Brutalist.
You had Amelia Perez.
Right.
You had A Real Pain. So those were the ones that really took home the most of the major awards.
Right. Brutalist was kind of the runner-up. It won several awards too. Best Actor, Adrian Brody got that. Best Cinematography, I thought.
Correct.
Well.
And it was almost as long as the Oscar ceremonies itself.
Longer, I think, right?
It was
4 hours.
A long
4-hour movie. It had an intermission. You watched it, right?
I did watch it.
Did you get up and get some snacks during the intermission?
I wanted to just get up and drive home. But that's another story. So it was really an interesting ceremony from that perspective.
Yeah, right.
It was probably overall the Oscar winners were among the least plugged-in friendly that I've seen for a long time. Here's an interesting thing. I was really struck at the very beginning when Conan O'Brien was talking. He gave this beautiful little speech, but talking a little bit about the people who work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yes, many people we celebrate tonight are not famous, they're not wealthy, but they are devoted to a craft that can, in moments, bring us all a little closer together. That's great. And I think it's true.
Yeah.
But when you look at the movies that were nominated and won this year, R-rated.
Yep.
No one went to see them. Those 4 winners that I named, they made a collective of less than $40 million at the domestic box office. So when you're looking at that and you hear Conan O'Brien talking about movies bringing us together, the movies themselves are a symptom of splintering the movie community.
Yep.
You look at that, and these are not movies that bring us together. They are movies that separate us. All the R-rated, all the tone and tenor of these movies, they are not things that we can enjoy necessarily with our families.
Well, that's a great point, right? Because the subject material, all of this stuff, even if some of these movies had some interesting points to make, interesting angles. Yeah, it's not something that you're going to say, hey, let's gather up the family and let's watch The Brutalist. Or let's watch Anora, right?
Exactly.
Not a family movie, right? And it speaks to the movies that won the awards that have done very well in these award shows. Yeah, they don't necessarily have that broad reach. And I found that very interesting too, because there was such a push for, hey, go back to the movie theater, right? They really made their pitch.
Yeah.
Conan made a pitch for it. Sean Baker, the director of Anora, made a pitch for it as well. Hey, bring people back to the movie theater. These aren't necessarily the movies that people would really be going back to the movie theater for, I would say, at least broadly speaking, broad audience, families,
I think
for sure.
I think that's absolutely true. These are very niche movies, and when you look at the Oscars over the last several years, you are finding that they are becoming more and more obscure in certain ways.
Sure.
And I think that you could make an argument that the Oscars are sort of artifying out the regular movie viewer. You talk about the movies made a collective of $40 million. Inside Out alone, Inside Out 2 made $653 million, which is
a little bit more.
a little bit more. We're talking about a huge amount of money that movie alone brought in. And when you talk about some of these movies that are awarded these Oscars, they're just not movies that a lot of people can embrace.
Sure. Well, I would say so. The two representatives for maybe more of a broader audience appeal were Dune Part 2 and Wicked, right? Those two movies won some respective awards as well. But I would say at least it felt very much like those two movies had no chance of winning the major awards this year, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. But they did make for one of the most delightful parts of the actual Oscar ceremony. Yeah. The sandworm playing all those instruments. I did enjoy that.
That was pretty interesting. I think I preferred John Lithgow's disappointed face. Like that.
I thought John Lithgow was going to be the star of the show for a while because he was pretty fun during the old costume award.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And you know what? You brought this up earlier. I think that was probably my favorite part was seeing, they did it a couple of times when they had the actors in the movies come out and talk about some of the people behind the scenes, right? The costuming, the makeup, all that stuff. So that I thought was really cool. That really made it feel like there was a sense of community there just in terms of, hey, here are the actors that are in front of the screen. They're giving kudos to the people that help make them, put them in those roles.
Absolutely.
Very literally.
Absolutely. You saw one of the things that I do actually genuinely enjoy about the Oscars is seeing the joy of those people who win them. You know, because you do see people, a lot of those people don't live lives that much differently than maybe you or I do. They go to work, they do their thing, they don't get the recognition that a lot of the other people involved in the movies do. So the Oscar, I mean, to say, yes, I have this little statue that Morton Downey Jr. has. Yeah. You know, Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. has sitting on his mantle. I mean, that's kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.
Let me tell you about two of my other favorite moments. Okay. I loved it when Zoe Saldana won and she shouted out to her mom. Yeah. I thought that was really sweet. Yeah. And when Adrian Brody won and he called out God.
Yeah. You know, first thing. Yeah.
That was, I thought, really nice and really genuine from both of them.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I think just throughout there was just kind of this consistent theme of people thanking their families, right? Which I know is not unique to this year necessarily, but that was just also nice to hear. Is you get to, again, here's this famous person that you really only know from the movies or maybe pop culture, entertainment news, whatever. And they have families too behind the scenes. And
absolutely.
A lot of their success relies on their families supporting them throughout all of their process. So I thought that was cool too. I really enjoyed that. Did you shed a tear when Wild Robot didn't win Best Animated Feature?
I loved Flow.
Yeah, Flow was great. Flow. I know you reviewed both. So.
And you got to say Latvia. Way to go, Latvia.
Go Latvia.
That was actually another thing that happened at the Oscars. There was a huge international flavor. Yeah, you had a lot of international films that sort of broke through.
You have an Iranian film, I think, won Best Short Animated Feature as well.
Right, and you had a lot of these movies that originated in foreign countries. Yep. 3 of the Best Picture nominees were actually foreign made. So that was a really impressive thing to see that growth internationally. Sure.
We'd be remiss if we didn't call out "I'm Still Here."
Yes, I'm Still Here.
The Brazilian film
Which
that
I
came
really
out.
liked.
Yes, yeah, you reviewed that as well.
It was a powerful film, and yes, I did love Flo. I was disappointed that The Wild Robot didn't get anything. It was up for 3 Oscars, I think, and it didn't get a single one. So,
little sniffle, little tear.
Yeah, little tears.
You know, the other I think takeaway that I walked away from the Oscars with was a comment that stuck with me. I'll say. Was one of the producers for a documentary. I think it was called The Girl in the Orchestra. So the producer went up on stage as part of her speech. She really talked about art and art giving meaning to the chaos. I think those were her exact words. And I found that interesting because in part, I agreed with it. I agree with it just in terms of like, you know, we can use art, we can use movies, we can use books, we can use all these different things to kind of process different themes, emotions, you know, character interactions, all of this stuff. But it also feels like, well, that's not the whole picture, right? If you're solely relying on art, creating art, consuming art, to make sense of the chaos, I think at the end of the day, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Well, I think that's a really wonderful point. And one of the things that makes me think of is you and I both do some writing, right?
Yeah.
We appreciate the art of storytelling. We appreciate art. And there is a lot of truth to that statement, you know? But I think that one of the things that when I think about the stories that appeal to me, when I think about the stories that I try to give, the art all points to something better, purer, stronger.
Yeah, it's not art for art itself necessarily.
It is to point people to the Almighty.
Yeah, you have to point them to God.
Exactly. And the things that are important in this world, the friends, the family, goodness that we can find in the world. And you saw hints of that within the Oscar ceremony. But maybe the Oscar nominations, the Oscar winners didn't necessarily express that as much as we might want them to.
Sure. And no surprise there, I would say. But that's just something that I think, again, as you and I have kind of our creative ventures as well, and as we watch a lot of movies and take in a lot of entertainment, that's something that I know I always appreciate seeing, is when a movie really hits on a truth that, you know, you can see the connection. Like it's going back to either faith or trust in God or a longing for God that we all have that's built into us.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because that actually makes me mindful of a movie that we just mentioned, Flow. It is a silent movie, beautifully animated. It is not explicitly faith-based by any means. But you have some moments that just sort of hint that there is something transcendent.
Nice.
And that is one of the reasons why that movie resonated with me so much. And I wish it would have won 18 Academy Awards.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that one. So good for Latvia. We're excited for you. All right, I think that's a good place to wrap up. So thanks everyone for watching. Let us know what you thought of the Oscars. Were you happy with the movies that won certain categories, different things like that? We would love to hear it. Let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe as well so you can be updated whenever we release more videos like this talking about pop culture, entertainment from a Christian perspective. Thanks, guys.